Before the home game console, arcade gaming in the late 70s and early 80s was the undisputed champion of video games. It gave birth to a wide range of experiences and video game characters that would eventually go on to be adapted for home consoles as ports or brand new standalone titles. Namco, the creators of Pac-Man, were arguably one of the big heavyweights in the arcade market, and were in a position to easily be able to take chances on the home game console. The character of Mappy seemed like a good choice and ripe opportunity for Namco to bring into the world of Nintendo after the well-received Mappy arcade game originally released in 1983. Borrowing from the original game mechanics of the arcade release of Mappy, Namco would go on to introduce Mappy-Land for the NES in 1986. Mappy-Land would be introduced to us as a console-only sequel to the 1983 arcade game. In all his glory, we could define Mappy-Land as being Mappy's entry and exit into the home gaming console market from Namco. This is Mappy-Land for the Nintendo Entertainment System. At first glance, there really isn't much to say about Mappy-Land. It is incredibly similar to the original arcade game release of Mappy, with of course a few new features. As in the Mappy arcade game, the same game mechanics and original objective still exists in Mappy-Land. Bounce off of the bendable platforms to reach and obtain the necessary items with only 3 tries to jump before the ground breaks. Collect all 6 items on the platforms and you'll advance onto the next level of the game. With Mappy-Land, the environments now come with new items to distract and hinder your enemies from getting closer to you. There are handlebars to swing on from platform to platform, along with other handlebars to spin off of and launch those pesky cats up into the sky. What starts out as a charming and cute side-scrolling game based on the beloved arcade classic slowly turns into a very challenging and difficult affair by the second stage. Mappy-Land is a hard game. It pulls no punches and doesn't conform to the culture of the home gaming console. It very much lives in the realm of still feeling like an arcade game with its unforgiving enemies and its progressively more difficult levels. Mappy-Land is sort of like a dance that needs to be memorized. The only way to truly beat it is to study it, lightly memorize each new stage, then strategically execute your movement to the characteristics of each new level. With each new level, the speed of your enemies will increase, making you more vulnerable if you are not quick to properly plan and decide your execution of movement. The only time that you are not being chased down are in the jungle levels, but they don't come without their own nuances of difficulty. Sometimes the jumps you made before and landed won't happen again, even though you'll do it the same way as you did before. The jumping from bendy platform to bendy platform is a little bit timing and a little bit just chance at times. The jungle levels are easily the most difficult, and when returning back to the regular platform stages, being chased by the cat seems like a walk in the park and a well-deserved break. Mappy-Land does work in a realm of consistency and well-designed levels that do make for a fun and challenging experience. A slightly tedious trait about Mappy-Land is that as you get further in the game, it newly introduces the additional objective of having to find an invisible gateway or warp zone, where you'll then need to find the last object in order to pass on to the next stage. I sometimes found myself forgetting about this new objective at times just in my rush to escape the pink cats. But eventually you will get used to it, and the warp zones do stay in the same places as you play each new stage. Another issue that many may have when playing Mappy-Land is in the many ways that you can die and reminding yourself of this. For example, if you jump off a bouncy platform to the ground in the jungle levels, you won't die. However, jumping off a small platform to the ground will make Mappy fall to his death, regardless that it isn't very high up. It can get a little bit annoying in the heat of the moment when trying to evade your enemies. In Mappy-Land, reminding yourself about the many ways you can die are incredibly crucial to your success in beating the game. The clean level design will be greatly appreciated on your first playthrough, but will at times feel disappointing when the objects you need to obtain are placed on murky, pixelated backgrounds rather than the cleaner, flat one-color backgrounds. If you liked the original arcade game, you will enjoy this slightly more updated platform adventure version. the simple narrative of each item signifying the journey of Mappy's life from bachelor to fatherhood isn't something that you'll be coming back to, as it's only told to us in a few sentences of dialogue with the completion of each stage. I did have one annoying glitch happen to me on my long play in one of the cave levels. For some reason, the platforms didn't show up on one stage, and I had to guess where I was jumping because of this. Annoying, I know, but when playing these older games, that's the risk we all have to be aware of. Sometimes the cartridge is having a bad day, and sometimes it works just fine. Sometimes the code inside wants to ruin your entire life and rob you blind, and sometimes the code inside rides off into the sunset with you. I didn't let this slow me down or hinder the fact that I actually do enjoy Mappy-Land. After all, Mappy-Land is the tick level of glitches. Mappy-Land is a lot like a game of chess. It will take patience, concentration, and a little bit of luck to beat at times. There is no real ending to Mappy-Land. After you complete its 4 stages, it will simply loop back to the first stage of the game with your same high score. You can keep going until you eventually lose all your lives or call it a day. Either way, when returning to play Mappy-Land, you are gifted with a continue option and a stage select option to replay your favorite moments. A lot of the time when playing games like this in our youth with little to no narratives, the things that sort of kept us coming back to it were the stories that we personally made up in our heads about what we were playing. In the same way that a child will use their imagination in playing with toys, this in theory is still very much true in video games that have open worlds or a lack of definition to how the character ended up where they are. When I always played Mappy-Land as a kid, I never thought it was the journey about this little mouse's life, but rather it was in a more existential realm. In Mappy-Land, I always thought that Mappy was actually dead, and he was trying to get back to his family somehow. A very extreme form of thought for a child to conjure up about Mappy-Land, but I was playing Ghosts and Goblins at the time too, so my headspace was very much in the realm of horror fantasy. As I've gotten older, I've never changed my mind about this. If anything, this theory I've had has only gotten stronger, and my theory is as follows. Mappy-Land is about Mappy being dead and stuck in a sort of purgatory realm. The train track that we start in is possibly where Mappy may have died, from being run over by a train getting home from work. Are the items he's collecting him trying to salvage his mortal memories from days of yore that remind him of the people he's left behind? Why do we go from a jungle to a ghost-busting style of game? Is the cemetery level actually where Mappy is buried, and him extinguishing the ghosts is Mappy trying to protect his remains? Is the church that he warps to where his funeral took place? And how is he warping through time and space to get to these other worlds to collect these items? Walking through walls? Sounds a lot like ghost vibes to me. Does Mappy's descent into the cave levels represent a descent into the depths of hell? And was the glitch in the cave level I recently played through supposed to resemble one of the 9 circles of hell from Dante's Divine Comedy? Is Mappy walking over water supposed to symbolically foretell that he is the chosen one over Pac-Man to lead Namco into the promised land? I guess we'll never know. All theories and conspiracies or shower thoughts aside, for the time being, Mappy-Land is about a mouse collecting items to move on to the next stage of his life. In a small way, we are all a little bit like Mappy, just trying to live our best life. All Mappy-Land really asks of you is to be prepared to be challenged again and again every time you decide to pick up the controller and play as this tiny mouse. Mappy-Land was in theory Mappy's last real game appearance that we would ever get in North America. Namco would give Mappy a Japan-only release titled Hopping Mappy in 1986 for the arcade. Soon afterwards, there would be Mappy Kids in 1989 for the NES, where the gamer would play in a side-scrolling adventure as Mappy's son. Mappy-Land is sort of Mappy's last hurrah at being situated in the game mechanics that he's known and loved for. The gameplay with bouncy floors. Or are they elastics? Or trampolines? The original arcade game of Mappy for most of us will definitely hold the torch for being Namco's signature game for the character of Mappy. However, Mappy-Land is a bona fide good time for the gamer looking for an opportunity to delve a little further into the world of Mappy. Until Namco revives Mappy to live another day, I say until then, good night, sweet prince. Thank you for watching this episode of The Select. If you like what you've seen and heard, give us a like and subscribe. This is Dusty Maxwell, and we'll see you on the next one.